Two teenage burglars and a man who refused to live in fear for any longer. Could this crime have been prevented? Let's get into it. Welcome back to another video. If you like true crime, solved or unsolved, hit the subscribe button. We're going to be posting weekly, possibly every Thursday. If you hit the subscribe button and hit the notifications, then you will be informed when we post a video. Now sit back, get some popcorn, maybe a little drink, and enjoy the show. For today's case, we're going to Morrison County in Little Falls, Minnesota, USA. It's a fairly small town with just over 2,000 people, and there's not a lot to do. I was reading up about this. I was trying to find it everywhere, but there's just not a lot to do in the place. Now, it's said that there's a lot of bars to frequent in the area, which is convenient. This story begins with a guy named Byron David Smith. He is 64 years of age. He's a single man living alone. He was a decorated veteran of the Vietnam War and a retired US State Department employee with a spotless record. Byron was enjoying his retirement when he was plagued with a number of burglaries to his home over the past few months. This left him unhappy and uneasy. Some beloved items which Byron held close to his heart were stolen during this time. Among the items were Byron's father's watch, which he received for serving during World War II. There was also medals and ribbons Byron had earned during this time in the Air Force, and thousands of dollars in cash was also stolen. These burglaries forced Byron to walk around his house wearing a holster with a loaded gun, ready and waiting. Good old Byron, he's walking around like a cowboy. Safe to say, Byron was a little worried that the burglaries would happen again, and he wanted to be prepared this time. Additionally to this, Byron installed security cameras around his house to protect himself. So it was on the night of Thanksgiving Day, which was November the 22nd, 2012. Byron had gone to visit his neighbours nearby, and he parked out front of his neighbour's house. He then saw Haile Kifer driving by with her cousin Nicholas Brady, and he then said to his neighbour he needed to be ready for her. Byron was referring to Kifer driving by the house when he said this. He then made his way back to his own house. Now, it is not known how Byron knew Haile was the one who originally broke into his house on the last two occasions, but it is speculated that there was rumours going around the town of how she was involved with previous burglaries around the area, and Byron may have heard this. Byron believes his neighbour Ashley Williams previously burgled his home, and he's seen her wearing a top stolen from his house. It is also speculated that Ashley Williams was friends with Haile, and she was letting Haile know when Byron was out of his house. Let's get into the background of Haile and Nicholas before we proceed. Haile Kifer, who was 18 years old at the time, a senior at Little Falls High School, described as a kind girl and a competitive athlete who struggled with drug abuse. She was known to be continuously in trouble with the law. Haile had 19 run-ins with the law, ranging from traffic stops to reports of suspicious activity, and it was also threats. Nicholas Brady, 17 years old at the time, he was Haile's cousin. He was described as an outgoing junior at Pilliger High School. He worked at his father's tree trimming business. He had been suspected in numerous burglaries around the area, and he had been investigated for being involved alongside Haile for previous break-ins in Byron's home. Now that we have the background of Haile and Nicholas, let's go back to when Byron seen them drive by when he was at his neighbour's house. So then Byron, he left the neighbour's house and he drove home after he seen Haile and Nicholas drive by. When he entered his home, he unscrewed all light bulbs in his house, so the place would be in darkness. And then he went down the steps into his basement. He took a left. He took another left, which a chair is just in between bookshelves. He pulled the chair out and he put the chair out of sight, and he sat there with his semi-automatic rifle, and he was waiting for someone to come down the stairs. At this moment in time, CCTV footage caught Haile and Nicholas canvassing the area. Byron said he then heard the window upstairs breaking and someone climb in. He then heard footsteps walking around his house for 12 minutes. Then he seen a pair of feet at the top of the stairs. Then as the person went down the stairs, he seen legs and the person's hips. Byron then shot Nicholas twice at the top of the stairs and one fatal wound to the head when he fell down the stairs.
You're dead.
Byron then made taunting remarks to Nicholas's body and wrapped him in a tarp and dragged him to the side of the basement into a different room. Byron then walked upstairs out of the basement, and 10 to 15 minutes later he ran back down the stairs to the basement and took up the same position on the chair out of sight. Minutes later, Haile can be heard entering the home and could be heard calling her cousin's name. She then walked down the stairs to Byron awaiting, and then Byron shot her. Haile, now wounded, she fell down the basement stairs, and at this point the recording Byron had originally set up, you can hear him say sorry about that as his gun jams. Byron then used his .22 caliber revolver pistol on Haile. Byron states Haile laughed when the gun jammed, but this could not be heard on the recordings. Haile, she could be heard saying oh my god, and Byron then shot her multiple times in the torso while she screamed sorry. And he then fired one shot next to her left eye. Byron repeatedly called Haile derogatory names and then dragged her into the other room, tossing her body on top of her cousin's, and shot her one final time under the chin, killing her. The killings, they were not reported until the next day. Byron had said that he didn't want to disturb the police on Thanksgiving Day. Byron then, he rang his neighbour Bill Anderson, and he asked Bill Anderson does he know any good attorneys, but Bill Anderson, he couldn't find any attorneys. So then Byron had asked Bill Anderson to ring the police because he had shot and killed the two teenagers. So Bill, he then rang the police at about 1 p.m, and when the police came, Byron met them right at the door and he showed them to where the bodies were in the basement workshop. Byron said the reason he had waited so long the next day to call in the murders was because he was afraid that someone related to either Haile or Nicholas was waiting for him either at the top of the stairs or looking through one of his windows. So he was just scared and he was waiting. He was just sitting there waiting to see if anyone would approach the basement or anything. So he then called Bill and he was then arrested. Upon investigation, it was found through evidence and a witness Nicholas did in fact break in and rob Byron's home on previous occasions. It was found that the initial shots Byron had took to the victims would have been justified as they were in his home, but the secondary fatal shots, they were not needed as the victims would have been rendered powerless after the first shot. On April 2014, the trial commenced and Byron was found guilty on 2 counts of first degree murder with premeditation and 2 counts of second degree murder. Byron, he was immediately sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The audio recordings were named by the jurors as the biggest influence on their decision.
Everybody, those of you just joining us, the verdict is in. That verdict is guilty. The homeowner has been found guilty for gunning down 2 intruders that come into his home. Right now, a call from Minnesota joining us, a neighbor, Jared. Hi, Jared. What do you think of the verdict?
I think he got what he deserved.
Why?
Definitely. Well, you can't do that. I mean, he definitely took it too far. It's one thing to take action in your home, but the comments that you just read, clearly the guy's got something going on upstairs. And I live next to him, and he seemed like an okay guy, but definitely knew something was up with him. When we started talking to the neighbors, we had a couple of us had dogs that would became missing. You would hear gunshots. We finally figured out, obviously, who it was, but you never seen him with a gun, but you would hear gunshots in the middle of the night. I'd be at work. My fiance would call me. She would hear gunshots. We'd call the cops. Nothing was ever heard of.
Were the home burglaries bad in the area?
Not really. I never had. I know that when I did move out of the home, about 8 months before this happened, the house that I was in was vandalized. Right
wow.
Next to it.
Well, I would say that's a problem. Let's take a look, Liz. Let's see the graphic about what all was stolen from Byron Smith's home before he finally takes action, gunning down 2 teens. Thousands in cash, his father's watch, his Air Force medals and ribbons, also medals and ribbons from Vietnam, firearms, jewelry. As a matter of fact, Dan O'Donnell questioned, Dan joining me from WISN, how many times had this guy been burglarized?
Well, his defense attorney brought up multiple times during this trial that he was the repeated victim, not just over the course of the past several months, Nancy, but several years. The attorney estimated that almost a dozen times Mr. Smith had been burglarized.
Upon first glance at this case, you'd think that this man is just defending his home. But as you dig deeper, you find a deranged man at his wit's end who didn't need to kill that night. But he did, and he now has to deal with the consequences. That is all for today's case. If you guys have any more suggestions for any cases, please let me know down below, or else you can send it into my email. If you like the video, please like, comment and subscribe. We really do appreciate the love we've been getting recently. But anyway, have a great day, and I will see you in the next case.